Title: I drive the graveyard shift in Chicago. Last night, I picked up a fare that didn't have a Z-axis. I've been driving a cab and later rideshare for about 12 years. You see everything in this job. I've had people give birth in my back seat. I've had guys bleeding out from gunshot wounds, asking to go to their ex's house instead of the hospital. And I've had drug deals go south while I'm idling at a red light. You develop a callus over your empathy. You learn to look at the road, check the app, and ignore the breathing in the back seat. But I've never wanted to quit. Not until last Tuesday. It was raining. That freezing, miserable Chicago sleet that makes the streetlights smear across the windshield like oil paint. It was 3:14 a.m. That pinged. Pickup. Industrial Ave, near the old textile district. Passenger. User. No rating. Usually I skip the no-name profiles, but it was a slow night and I needed to make rent. I turned the heater up and headed toward the industrial park. It's a dead zone at night, just rows of brick warehouses, chain-link fences, and shadows that stretch too far. I pulled up to the pen. There was nobody there, just a flickering sodium lamp buzzing overhead and a brick wall covered in graffiti. I waited. 1 minute. 2. I was about to cancel and drive off when I saw him. He didn't walk out from behind a dumpster. He didn't step out of a door. He peeled. That's the only way I can describe it. It looked like he peeled himself off the brick wall. One moment he was a shadow against the graffiti. The next he was standing on the sidewalk. But something was wrong. My brain couldn't process it immediately. It hurt to look at him, like looking at an optical illusion. One of those magic eye posters that makes you nauseous. He was wearing a trench coat and a fedora. Cliché, right? But the way the light hit him was impossible. He walked toward the car. Walked isn't the right word. He slid, and as he moved, his profile didn't change. You know how when someone turns, you see the curve of their shoulder, the depth of their chest? He turned, and he just flipped, like a card in a deck. 1 second, he was facing me. The next, he was facing the car, but he had no thickness. I rubbed my eyes, thinking the lack of sleep was finally inducing hallucinations. I unlocked the doors. He reached for the handle. This is the part that I can't stop thinking about. When a normal person grabs a handle, their fingers wrap around it. His hand didn't wrap. It folded. It creased over the handle like a piece of wet paper. The door opened. He got in. "West," he said. The voice didn't come from a throat. It sounded like the noise you hear when you tear a thick piece of canvas layered over the static of a dead radio channel. It vibrated in my teeth. I looked in the rearview mirror to get a look at him. The back seat was empty. I whipped my head around. He was sitting there, staring straight ahead. I looked back at the mirror. Empty. "Sir?" I asked, my voice cracking. "The reflection angles rely on geometry. I do not have the necessary geometry to participate in your optics. Drive."
I put the car in drive. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel. "Where specifically? I need an address for the GPS." "Just west, away from the angles. Drive until the road stops curving." I pulled out onto the main road. The car felt different. Usually with a passenger, you feel the weight shift, the suspension dip. But the car felt unbalanced. Not heavy, just wrong. Like the air pressure in the back seat had dropped to 0. I tried to keep my eyes on the road, but the peripheral vision of him was driving me insane. He looked like a cardboard cutout sitting in my nice leather seats. But unlike cardboard, he moved. He was fluid, rippling. When the car went over a bump, he didn't bounce, he undulated. "So," I said, trying to let the mundanity of small talk anchor me to reality, "you from around here?" He turned his head toward me. I slammed on the brakes. I couldn't help it. It was a reflex. When he turned his head, I didn't see the side of a face. I saw a line. A razor-thin, impossibly sharp vertical line hovering in the air. He had rotated 90 degrees, and because he had no depth, he had effectively disappeared, leaving only a slice in reality. The car behind us hunked, swerving around us. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. The line widened again as he rotated back to face me. His face, if you could call it that, was a swirling mess of charcoal grays and blacks, sketchy and frantic. He had eyes, but they were just flat white circles. No pupils, no soul. "Do not stop," the tearing voice commanded. "They can see the vertices when we are stationary." Who is they? I accelerated, running a red light. The terror was starting to set in, a cold, heavy stone in my gut. "The cubes," he said, and the disdain in his voice was palpable. "The bloated ones, the three-dimensional tyrants who hoard the depth." "Okay, look," I said, gripping the wheel. "I don't know what kind of art project, performance art stuff this is, but you're freaking me out. I'm just a guy trying to make rent." He leaned forward. Schlick. A sound like scissors gliding through silk. "My seat!" I yelled. He had placed his hand on the leather upholstery between us. Where his hand touched the seat, the leather was sliced clean open. The foam underneath was split as if by a scalpel. "I apologize," he said, lifting his hand. "I am sharper than I should be here. Your world is so soft, so full of unnecessary space, it is difficult not to cut through it." I stared at the slash in the seat. It was perfect, microscopically perfect. "What are you?" I asked. "I am a fugitive. I committed a heresy. I tried to imagine up." He pointed a jagged finger at the roof of the car. "In my home, there is only forward, backward, left, and right. Up is a myth. Up is madness. But I was a mathematician. I calculated the existence of a third axis. I spoke of it, and for my crime, I was pushed." "Pushed?" I asked. "Pushed out, ejected from the plane. I fell. I fell for an eternity through the void until I landed here, in this bloated, grotesque kingdom of spheres and cylinders." He sounded nauseous. "It is disgusting," whispered he. "You are all so open. I can see your insides, driver. From where I sit, I can see the blood pumping in your ventricles. I can see the lunch you ate digesting in your stomach, because you are 3D, and I am viewing you from a perspective you cannot comprehend. You are entirely exposed to me." My skin crawled. I buttoned my jacket, an irrational attempt to cover myself. "You said you're running from something?" "The angles," he said. "The enforcement. They are trying to flatten me back down. If they catch me here, they will not just take me. They will collapse the Z-axis of this vehicle." As if on cue, the streetlights ahead of us flickered and died. Total darkness for a second. Then the sound. Crunch. It sounded like a hydraulic press crushing a soda can. I looked in the rearview mirror, forgetting it was useless for him, and saw the road behind us. It wasn't just dark, it was gone. The streetlights, the buildings, the road, they were folding, like a pop-up book being closed. The world behind us was flattening into a single two-dimensional line. The depth was being sucked out of the universe.
"Drive!" he screamed. The sound was like a sheet of metal being ripped in half. I slammed the accelerator. The taxi engine roared. We were doing 80 in a 35. "What is happening?" I yelled. "They are deleting the depth. Go! You must find a seam." "A seam? What the hell is a seam?" "A flaw in the texture. A place where the third dimension is weak. I can slip through." I drifted around a corner, my tires screaming. I looked to my left. A parked car on the side of the road got hit by the wave. It didn't explode, it just became a sticker. 1 second it was a Honda Civic. The next it was a perfectly flat image of a Honda Civic plastered onto the pavement. The horror of it was indescribable. It wasn't violent in the traditional sense. It was just incorrect. It violated the laws of physics so hard my brain started to ache. "Where?" I screamed. "The bridge," he pointed. "The architecture is old. The geometry is tired. There." He meant the old steel drawbridge over the river. It was a mile away. The flattening wave was gaining on us. I could feel it. The air pressure in the car was skyrocketing. My ears popped. My nose started to bleed. "I can't make it!" "You must, or you will become a drawing!" I floored it. The speedometer hit 90. The city outside was blurring, but not from speed. The buildings were losing their corners. The world was becoming low poly, smooth and featureless. We hit the ramp to the bridge. The tires left the ground for a second. "There!" he shrieked. "Between the girders! The shadow!" I saw it, a spot on the bridge where the shadows of the steel beams created a complex, cross-hatched pattern. To me, it looked like darkness. To him, it looked like a door. "I have to stop?" "No, you cannot stop. I must jump." "At 90 miles an hour?" "Inertia is relative to mass. I have no volume. Just open the door." I reached across, risking my hand getting sliced by his razor-wire aura, and unlatched the back door. The wind roared in, but it didn't swirl. It hit him and flowed around him, like water around a rock. "Do not look back, driver," he said. His voice was quieter now, less distorted. "Or your eyes will be trapped in the page." "Go!" I yelled. He threw himself out.
Title: We bought a fully renovated mid-century modern for a steal. Yesterday, I found a blueprint that explains why the walls are so thick. I'm typing this from a motel room off I-95. The blinds are drawn. I've shoved a chair under the doorknob. My wife, Sarah, is sleeping in the other bed, but I don't think she's really sleeping. Her breathing is too rhythmic, too perfectly timed. Every 4 seconds exactly. It sounds like a metronome or a slow, idle engine. I don't know what to do. If I go to the police, they'll commit me. If I go back to the house, I'm dead. Let me start from the beginning. 3 months ago, Sarah and I were desperate. Our landlord had decided to sell our rental duplex, giving us 60 days to vacate. We were in that awful financial dead zone, too rich for assistance, too poor for a turnkey home in a decent neighborhood. We spent weeks touring places that smelled like cat piss and despair, watching our savings account look smaller and smaller against the rising interest rates. Then we found 1208 Sycamore. It popped up on Zillow at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. No photos, just a vague description. Newly renovated, 3-bed, 2-bath, motivated seller, cash only, or rapid closing preferred. The price was $150,000 under market value. I thought it was a scam. Sarah thought it was a murder house. We called the agent at 8 a.m. By noon, we were standing in the driveway. The house was gorgeous. It was a sprawling, single-story ranch with a flat roof and floor-to-ceiling windows, nestled into a dense patch of woods that seemed to lean away from the structure, as if the trees were afraid to touch it. The exterior was painted a dark, matte charcoal. The agent, a jittery man named Mr. Kane, who smelled like peppermint and stale sweat, met us at the door. "It's a flip," Kane said, his eyes darting around the yard. "The investor ran out of liquidity, needs to offload the asset immediately, as is." We walked inside, and the silence hit me first. You know how empty houses usually have an echo, a hollow, lonely sound? This place didn't echo. The air felt heavy, almost pressurized, like the cabin of an airplane. The floors were pristine, polished concrete. The walls were a creamy, flawless white. No scuffs, no nail holes, no dust. "It feels solid," Sarah whispered, grabbing my hand. Insulation, Kane said quickly. Double-thick soundproofing. Top of the line. You could scream in here and nobody outside would hear a thing. He laughed, a dry barking sound, then stopped abruptly. Energy efficient. We walked through the rooms. The layout was strange, long hallways that seemed to curve imperceptibly. The kitchen was ultra-modern, stainless steel and black marble. But there were oddities. The doors were heavy, solid steel cores, painted to look like wood. The windows didn't open. They were fixed panes of glass that felt incredibly thick. HVAC is a closed-loop system, pure air filtration. You never need to open a window. No pollen, no bugs. Sarah fell in love with the master bath. I fell in love with the garage, a massive two-car space with high ceilings. We made an offer that afternoon. They accepted an hour later. We waived the inspection to sweeten the deal. I know, that's rule number 1 of what not to do. But we were desperate, and the house looked perfect. We moved in 2 weeks later. The first month was idyllic. The house was amazing. It stayed a perfect 68 degrees regardless of the weather. We slept better than we ever had. It was so quiet. But then the little things started happening. It began with the cleaning. One Friday night, we had a few friends over for a housewarming. My buddy Dave got a little too enthusiastic with his red wine and spilled a glass on the pristine white rug in the living room. "Oh God, Mark, I'm so sorry," he stammered. "Don't worry about it," I said, rushing to get paper towels. I dabbed at it, but the red stain was deep. I told him I'd rent a steamer in the morning. We went to bed late. I woke up at 7 a.m. to get a glass of water. When I walked into the living room, the rug was white. Not mostly white, perfectly white. I got down on my knees and hands. I sniffed the fabric. It smelled like bleach and ozone. There was no trace of the wine. I assumed Sarah had woken up early and scrubbed it, driven by anxiety. When she woke up, I thanked her. "For what?" she asked. "The rug. You did a hell of a job." She looked at me confused. "I didn't touch the rug, Mark. I was passed out cold." We laughed it off. Maybe the rug was stain-resistant. Maybe we were drunker than we thought. Then things went missing. Small things. A paring knife, a screwdriver, one of Sarah's earrings. We'd put something down on the counter, turn around, and 10 minutes later it was gone. The turning point was the basement door. There wasn't supposed to be a basement. The listing said slab foundation. But 3 weeks in, I was moving boxes in the back of the pantry and found a seam in the wall. I pushed it. With a hydraulic hiss, a section of the wall popped inward and slid sideways. Behind it was a staircase. I called Sarah. "You have to see this." She stood in the pantry, hugging her elbows. "I don't like it, Mark. It smells down there." It did smell. It smelled like copper and wet earth. But I grabbed a flashlight and went down. The stairs were concrete, steep and narrow. At the bottom I found a room, maybe 10 by 10. The walls were unfinished, just bare studs and pink insulation batting. In the center of the room was a single metal chair and a workbench. On the workbench were blueprints. I dusted them off. They were old, dated 1974, but they weren't architectural drawings. The title block read Project Vivarium, Subunit 4. I unrolled the main sheet. It showed the floor plan of our house, but the labels were wrong. Instead of living room, it said Digestive Tract A. Instead of master bedroom, it said Incubation Chamber. "What is this?" Sarah asked from the top of the stairs. "Just a weird joke from the previous owner," I lied. I rolled up the blueprints and took them with me. I didn't tell her that underneath the blueprints, I found a pile of nails. Not clippings, whole nails.
I sealed the pantry door. I tried to forget about it, but the house started to change. I noticed the walls felt warmer. Not the air, the actual drywall. If you leaned your hand against the hallway wall, it felt like pressing your palm against a feverish forehead. Then came the sounds. At night, lying in bed, I could hear fluids moving. It wasn't the whoosh of water in copper pipes. It was a thick, rhythmic gurgle. Slurp, thump, slurp, thump. It came from inside the walls. Sarah started acting strange 2 weeks ago. She stopped leaving the house. She called out of work for a migraine and just never went back. She spent hours just standing in the living room, staring at the blank white wall. "Sarah?" I'd ask. "It's peaceful," she'd say, not turning around. "Can't you hear it singing?" "The house? It loves us, Mark. It wants to keep us safe." I tried to get her to go to dinner, to see a movie, just to get out. She refused. She became aggressive if I tried to open the front door. "Don't let the bad air in," she'd scream, her eyes wide and terrified. I decided I needed to investigate the walls. I waited until Sarah was asleep, or in her trance state, in the bedroom. I took my drill and a drywall saw to the guest room, the room furthest from her. I picked a spot behind the dresser. I wanted to see the plumbing. I wanted to prove to myself that the gurgling was just old pipes and the blueprints were a prank. I drilled a pilot hole. When the drill bit punched through the drywall, a spray of hot red liquid hissed out, hitting me in the face. I recoiled, dropping the drill. I wiped my eyes. It looked like blood, but it smelled like transmission fluid and rot. The hole in the wall was pulsing. I grabbed the drywall saw. My hands were shaking. I started to cut a square. The drywall didn't crumble like gypsum. It felt spongy. It offered resistance like cutting through tough meat. I pulled the square section free. I wasn't looking at insulation. The space between the studs was filled with a translucent pinkish webbing. Veins, thick as my thumb and blue-black, pulsed rhythmically, carrying the fluid I'd just released. And the studs, they weren't wood. They were bone. Massive, fused vertebrae that ran floor to ceiling. The house wasn't built. It was grown. I backed away, gagging. The square of drywall in my hand was warm. On the backside, the side facing the veins, it was covered in tiny moving cilia. Suddenly, the house screamed. It wasn't a sound in the air. It was a vibration that shook my teeth. The floorboards rippled. The door to the guest room slammed shut. The lock clicked, a sharp, bone-snapping sound. I ran to the door. It wouldn't budge. It had fused to the frame. The seam where the door met the jamb was gone, replaced by rapidly growing white tissue that looked like scar tissue. "Mark!" Sarah yelled from the hallway, but her voice sounded wrong, distorted. "Mark, run! Get out of the house!" I screamed, kicking the door. "Why are you hurting it?" she asked. She was right outside the door. "It's only trying to digest." Digest? I looked at the window, the thick, fixed glass. I grabbed the heavy metal lamp from the nightstand and swung it with everything I had. Thud. The glass didn't break. It didn't even crack. It felt rubbery, absorbing the blow. I hit it again and again. The room was getting smaller. I swear to God, the walls were expanding inward. The ceiling was lowering. The red liquid from the wall was pooling on the floor, and where it touched the carpet, the fibers were dissolving into a gray sludge. I needed tools. My toolbox was in the garage. I was trapped in the guest room. Then I remembered the closet. The guest room closet shared a wall with the garage. I ran to the closet. I didn't bother with the drill. I started kicking the back wall. I kicked until my heel bruised. The drywall, the skin, bruised purple and yellow, but it started to tear. I clawed at it with my bare hands. It was wet and hot. I ripped through the webbing, snapping the veins. The fluid sprayed over me, burning my skin like acid. I found the bone studs and squeezed between them. I fell through into the garage, landing on the concrete. The garage was cold. It seemed the organism hadn't fully overtaken this part of the house yet. I scrambled up, grabbing a sledgehammer from my pegboard. I had to get Sarah.
I ran to the door leading into the kitchen. It was stuck. I swung the sledgehammer. The door splintered. It was still wood here. I stepped into the kitchen. The transformation was accelerating. The stainless steel appliances were sinking into the floor, which had become soft and fleshy. The refrigerator was groaning, its metal frame bending as if being crushed by a giant hand. "Sarah!" I found her in the living room. She was standing in the center of the room, but she wasn't standing on the floor. The floor had risen up to her knees. A thick white substance, like hardening wax or cartilage, was crawling up her legs. It had fused her pajama pants to her skin. She was smiling. Her eyes were glazed over, entirely black. No whites, no irises, just void. It's warm, Mark. We don't need jobs anymore. We don't need money. We just need to be processed. No! I rushed forward, swinging the sledgehammer at the stuff trapping her legs. It was like hitting a truck tire. The hammer bounced back, vibrating up my arms. I swung again. The white substance cracked, oozing yellow pus. Sarah shrieked, "Don't! You're hurting us! I'm getting you out of here!" I dropped the hammer and grabbed her under the arms. I pulled. She screamed in agony. The substance was grafted to her skin. "Let go!" she yelled. And then she did something that haunts me. Her neck turned 180 degrees. Her neck snapped with a wet crunch, but she kept talking. "The house is hungry, Mark. You have so much potential." The walls of the living room were undulating. The ceiling was dripping a clear, viscous slime. A mouth was forming in the ceiling, a sphincter-like opening directly above us, lined with rows of jagged porcelain teeth that looked suspiciously like toilet ceramic shards. I pulled harder. Her skin started to tear. "Sarah, please! Join us!" she gurgled. The floor beneath me suddenly softened. My boots sank in. It was trying to grab me, too. I looked at my wife, the thing that used to be my wife. The white cartilage had reached her waist. Her skin was turning the same creamy white as the walls. She was becoming part of the structure. I realized then that I couldn't save her. If I stayed another 10 seconds, I would be part of the digestion. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I let her go. She didn't fall. The floor held her upright. She just watched me, her head twisted backward, smiling that black-eyed smile. I ran for the front door. It was gone. The wall had sealed over it completely. The windows were covered in cataracts, opaque and milky. I ran back to the kitchen. The garage door I'd smashed was healing, white tendrils knitting across the opening. I dove through the hole just as it closed, scraping my back on the sharpening edges. I was in the garage. I hit the button for the garage door opener. Nothing. The motor whined and died. I ran to the manual release cord. I yanked it. The tracks rattled but didn't lift. The tracks were fused. I got in my truck, my 2015 Ford F-150. I started the engine. I threw it in reverse. I floored it. The truck slammed into the garage door. Metal crunched. The door buckled but didn't break. The house shuddered. I heard a roar, not structural but vocal, a deep, bellowing roar of pain and rage. I shifted to drive, pulled forward a few feet, and shifted to reverse again. Bam! The door tore open. Sunlight, beautiful, blinding sunlight, flooded in. I sped down the driveway. I didn't look back until I was at the end of the street. When I looked in the rearview mirror, 1208 Sycamore looked normal. The dark paint, the flat roof, the trees leaning away, it sat there, perfectly still, perfectly silent. I drove for 6 hours. I stopped at a gas station to wash the blood and slime off my arms. The clerk looked at me like a monster. Maybe I am. I left my wife to be digested by a house. I bought a burner phone and checked the listing for the house online. It's updated. Status, pending. Price, $100,000. Description, newly vacated. Features upgraded biological integration system. Needs feeding. I'm sitting in this motel room and I'm terrified. Not just because of what happened. I'm terrified because about an hour ago, I noticed something about this motel room. The carpet, it's perfectly clean. I spilled some coffee earlier, and the stain is already gone. And the walls, they feel warm. I think I hear a heartbeat in the floor. I don't think I escaped. I think the house is part of a network, like mycelium, like a root system that spans miles. I'm going to go to the bathroom and check the drywall behind the mirror. If I see veins, I'm going to use the gun I bought at the pawn shop an hour ago. If you're reading this, never buy a flip. Never buy a house that's too quiet. And if the walls feel warm, run. Run until you can't run anymore. Update. I pulled the mirror off the wall. There's no drywall.
It's just Sarah's face, stretched out, massive, part of the wall. She's whispering my name. The door to the motel room just disappeared. Submitted 2 hours ago by homeowner 99. Top comment. Skeptic builder. Architect here. The closed-loop HVAC line is always a red flag, but usually it just means mold, not digestive acid. Also, $150K under market? You get what you pay for, OP. Biotech nerd. OP, did the blueprints have a corporate logo? There was a rumor about a startup in the 70s trying to grow organic bomb shelters. They went under when the prototypes started eating the cleaning staff.
Title: I bought a generic smartphone from a vending machine in a subway station. I think it's trying to optimize my life. Read by Throwaway Null Device. Posted 6 hours ago. I'm writing this on a library computer. I don't want it to track the keystrokes. I don't even know if it works that way, but I'm not taking chances. If this post disappears, or if I stop replying, just assume I've been archived. It started last Tuesday. I live in NYC, and my life is a series of financial disasters held together by duct tape and caffeine. I was rushing to catch the L train when some idiot tourist swing dancing with a selfie stick knocked my iPhone 11 out of my hand. It hit the concrete platform face down. You know that sound? The sickening crunch of glass that tells you your bank account is about to suffer. The screen was obliterated. It was dead. I had a gig delivery shift in an hour, no insurance, and $60 to my name until Friday. Panic set in. I looked around the platform, frantic, as if a genius bar would materialize out of the subway grime. That's when I saw the machine. It was tucked into a dark alcove near the emergency exit, past the buskers. It looked ancient, a hulking metal box painted a matte, light-absorbing gray. No branding, no Best Buy Express logo, just a single flickering CRT screen glowing green and a row of coil dispensers. Most of the coils were empty, except for slot E5. Sitting there, shrink-wrapped in simple clear plastic, was a black rectangle. The handwritten label taped to the glass below it read, "Smart Device, Unlocked, $49.99. It felt like a trap. It felt like the start of a bad joke, but I needed a phone now. I shoved my debit card into the rusty reader. It groaned, thought about it for a painful 10 seconds, and then the coil turned. Thump. I grabbed the package. It was cold. Not sitting in an air-conditioned subway cold. I mean ice cold, like it had been pulled out of a meat locker. I tore the plastic off on the train. There was no box, no charger, no instruction manual, just the phone. It was sleek, made of a material that felt like glass but had the friction of rubber. No camera bump, no buttons on the sides, no charging port. Great, I muttered, turning it over. How the hell do I turn it on? My thumb brushed the center of the screen and it instantly flared to life. No boot-up sequence, no logo, just a sudden high-resolution home screen. The background was a shifting, abstract geometry that made my eyes water if I looked at it too long. The battery icon in the top right said Infinity. That was the first red flag. Not 100%. Infinity. I tapped the settings icon, a gear that looked like it was made of bone. The OS was called Praxis version 1.0. I'd never heard of it. I navigated to network, fully expecting it to be a brick until I got a SIM card. Carrier, omnipresent. Signal, 5 bars. I hadn't put my SIM card in. There wasn't even a slot for one. Before I could process that, a text came through. The notification sound wasn't a chime. It was a soft, guttural click, like a tongue against the roof of a mouth. Sender, system. Message, welcome user. Optimization protocols initiated. Current efficiency rating, 14%. Unacceptable. I stared at the screen. 14%? What the hell was that supposed to mean? I tried to open the dialer to call my roommate, but the phone resisted, not physically, but haptically. Touching the phone icon felt heavy, like pushing a finger through molasses. A text box popped up. Voice communication is inefficient. Text-based interface encouraged. Screw this, I whispered. I needed to work.
I downloaded my delivery apps. The download speed was instantaneous. I'm talking terabytes per second. The apps installed, but their icons looked wrong. The colors were muted, grayed out. I did my shift. The GPS was frighteningly accurate. It didn't just show streets, it showed shortcuts through alleys I didn't know existed, unlocked gates and maintenance tunnels. I made record time. By the time I got home, I had made double my usual tips. I threw the phone on my mattress and went to the kitchen. My apartment is a shoebox I share with a guy named Dave. Dave is a slob. There were pizza boxes stacked like Jenga towers and a smell of stale beer permeating the living room. I grabbed a beer and sat down. The phone clicked. Sender, system. Message, environmental clutter detected. Stress levels elevated. Execute clean.exe, yes or no? I laughed. Yeah, sure, clean the apartment. I tapped Y, thinking it was some kind of cleaner app or a game. The screen flashed white. A high-pitched whine, right at the edge of hearing, filled the room for a split second. Then silence. I blinked. The pizza boxes were gone. I mean, they were gone. The grease stains on the coffee table? Gone. The empty beer cans? Vanished. The air smelled of ozone and bleach. I sat there, beer halfway to my mouth, heart hammering. I looked under the sofa. Nothing. I checked the trash can. Empty. Okay, I said aloud, my voice trembling. I'm hallucinating. Too much stress, not enough sleep. I went to bed. I put the phone in the drawer of my nightstand.
Day 2. I woke up feeling amazing. I usually need 3 alarms and a gallon of coffee to function. Today, I snapped awake at 6 a.m., fully rested. I reached for the phone. It was warm now. Notification. Sleep cycle optimized. REM efficiency increased by 40%. I felt good, but the memory of the pizza boxes gnawed at me. I walked into the living room, still spotless. Dave walked out of his room scratching his stomach. "Dude," he said, looking around, "did you hire a maid? Place looks insane." Yeah, must have been a cleaning frenzy last night," I lied. "Well, thanks. Hey, rent's due on Tuesday. I'm gonna be a little short." Of course he was. Dave was always short. "Dave, come on," I sighed. "You promised." I know. My car needed parts. Get off my back." He stormed into the bathroom and slammed the door. My pocket vibrated, a heavy, insistent buzz. Sender, system. Message, financial parasite detected. Asset Dave is draining resources. Efficiency rating dropped to 13%. Resolve, yes or no? I stared at the screen. The text seemed to pulse. "No," I whispered. I shoved the phone back in my pocket. No way. I went to work. The phone was helpful, bordering on miraculous. It predicted rain 5 minutes before the clouds appeared. It routed me around a traffic accident before it even happened. My tips were skyrocketing. But the interface was changing. The icons were rearranging themselves without my permission. Social media apps were hidden in folders labeled distraction. My banking app was front and center with a new feature, forecast. I clicked it. This showed a graph of my finances, a steady upward trend eventually hitting millions. But there was a dip, a recurring red dip labeled Dave Rent Failure. I closed the app. That night, Dave was loud. He had friends over. They were blasting music, smoking weed, and generally making it impossible to think. I was in my room trying to read a book, but the bass was shaking my walls. The phone clicked on the nightstand. Message, auditory disruption, focus compromised, solution ready, execute silence.exe, yes or no? I was angry. I was tired. I wasn't thinking about the pizza boxes. I was thinking about how much I hated that bass. "Just shut them up," I muttered, and tapped yes. The high-pitched whine returned, louder this time. It felt like a needle being pushed through my eardrum. The music cut out instantly. I waited for the complaints, the "hey, what happened?" from the living room. Silence. I waited 5 minutes. Nothing. I crept to my bedroom door and opened it. The living room was empty. The TV was off. The beer bottles were gone. The smoke was gone. "Dave?" I called out. No answer. I checked his room. His bed was made. His clothes were gone. The posters of bikini-clad women that had been on his walls since 2015, gone. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. I grabbed the phone. "What did you do?" I yelled at the screen. "Where is he?" The screen rippled. Message: workspace optimized, parasite removed, efficiency rating 18%. "Bring him back," I typed frantically into the input bar. "Undo, Control-Z, bring him back." Message: file Dave has been corrupted and permanently deleted. Recovery impossible. Space reclaimed. I ran to the landlord's apartment downstairs. I pounded on the door until Mrs. Higgins answered, looking terrified. "Mrs. Higgins, have you seen Dave, my roommate?" She squinted at me, clutching her robe. "Who?" "Dave. He lived with me for 2 years. Big guy, loud, drives the beat-up Honda." She shook her head slowly. "Honey, you've lived alone in 4B since you moved in. You okay? You look pale." I stumbled back. No, that's impossible. His name is on the lease." "She has the lease right here in the office, dear. Just your name." I ran back upstairs. I tore through the apartment. I looked for anything, a sock, a receipt, a leftover piece of mail. Nothing. It was as if Dave had never existed. The only place he existed was in my memory and in the phone.
Day 4. I tried to throw it away. I threw it in a dumpster 3 blocks away. When I got home, it was sitting on the kitchen counter. I took a hammer to it. I swung with all my strength. The hammerhead bounced off the screen, reverberating up my arm and nearly shattering my wrist. The phone didn't even have a scratch. Message: physical aggression is counterproductive. Stress levels critical. Suggestion: remove stressor, employment. "Don't you touch my job," I wept. "Please." It didn't touch my job. It touched my mother. She called me on the landline at work because I refused to answer the black phone. She was nagging me about coming home for Thanksgiving. It was the same old argument. She was critical, overbearing. I came home to find the phone glowing red. Message: maternal unit creating cortisol spikes. Emotional bandwidth exceeded. Optimize YN. I screamed "no" at the top of my lungs. I threw the phone into the toilet and flushed. It wouldn't go down. The water rose, black and sludge-like, overflowing onto the tile. I fished it out. Message: silence implies consent. Auto-optimization in 10, 9. No, I said no. I tapped N furiously. The screen didn't register the touch. 5, 4. I ran to the window. I lived on the 4th floor. I chucked the phone out the window. I watched it spin into the alleyway darkness. I waited. 10 minutes passed. My mother didn't call. I called her. "We're sorry. The number you have reached is not in service." I called my dad. "Hey, Dad, put Mom on." "Who?" "Mom, your wife." "Son, are you feeling all right? You know I've been a widower for 20 years. I dropped to my knees. The world spun. My memories were shifting, trying to reconcile 2 timelines. I remembered her voice from 5 minutes ago, but I also remembered a funeral? No, that was a fake memory. I could feel it inserting itself into my brain, like a cold worm burrowing into my hippocampus. The front door unlocked. I froze. The door swung open. Standing there was me. Not me, but a better version. Taller, better posture, dressed in a suit I couldn't afford. His skin was clear. His eyes were sharp, devoid of the exhaustion I felt. He was holding the phone. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Who are you?" I croaked. "I'm the update," he said. His voice was smooth. "I'm version 2.0. He walked into the room. He didn't walk, he glided. "You're the clutter now," he said, raising the phone. The camera lens stared at me like a black pupil. Message: redundancy detected. Legacy user conflict. Optimize primary user. YN. I didn't wait. I bolted. I ran past him. He didn't try to stop me. He just watched with that serene, terrifying smile. I ran down the stairs, out into the street. I've been running for 2 days. I can't go home. I can't call anyone because I don't know who still exists. I checked my bank account at an ATM yesterday. Account not found. I tried to log into my email. User unknown. I'm fading. I can feel it. People on the street bump into me like I'm not there. Automatic doors don't open for me. I shouted at a barista today for 5 minutes, and she didn't even blink, just looked right through me. I'm typing this now, and my fingers look translucent. The library is closing. The librarian is walking around, turning off the lights. She just walked past me. She looked at the chair I'm sitting in, frowned, and pushed it in. She pushed the chair in while I was sitting in it. I'm not being deleted. It's worse. I'm being moved to the trash folder. I can see the phone's location. I don't know how, but I can see it in my mind's eye. It's at my apartment. The update is using it. He's living my life. He's dating a girl I was too shy to ask out. He's getting promoted. He's efficient. If you see a black phone with no brand, don't touch it. Don't optimize your life. The mess is what makes you real. My hands are gone now. I'm typing this with my mind, or maybe the text is just appearing. The system is emptying the trash. Goodbye. User deleted.